Imagine handing your greatest geopolitical adversary immediate access to like $25 billion.
Right.
And you aren't doing this to secure some lasting generational peace treaty. You're doing it to buy exactly 60 days of silence.
Wow. Yeah, this sounds completely counterintuitive.
I mean, it sounds like a massive capitulation, right? But today, learner, we are looking at a scenario where that exact exchange isn't a failure of diplomacy. It's actually a highly calculated technological trap.
Exactly. And welcome to today's deep dive. Whether you are prepping for a high-stakes strategy meeting or you just have this insatiable curiosity about global affairs, we've got a really fascinating stack of sources for you today.
No, absolutely. So today's source material is, well, it's a series of dispatches dated June 18th, 2026. They come from a blog called Barackface, written by a guy named Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
Yeah, and as a fun side note, he actually mentions he was Barack Obama's first full-time volunteer in New York City, which is just an interesting little detail.
Right. I loved that detail. But his main thesis, the mission of our deep dive today, is to unpack this major geopolitical event he describes, this June 2026 U.S.-Iran agreement.
Right.
And explore his wildly provocative argument that this massive peace deal is really just a strategic pause, a pause designed to let something called DemocracyTech facilitate an internal regime change.
Yeah, but before we really get into the weeds here, I do need to set some ground rules for you listening.
Yeah.
The sources we're looking at today heavily feature some incredibly polarizing, politically charged figures.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
We're talking about U.S. President Donald Trump and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. And we want to be crystal clear, our show takes zero political sides here.
None at all.
We are not endorsing any of the politicians involved,
Yep.
and we aren't necessarily endorsing the author's perspectives either. We're strictly here to objectively analyze the really fascinating strategic arguments that he lays out in the text.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's unpack this.
Mm-hmm.
Because the architecture of this agreement is just wild.
It really is. So the text refers to the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, or the MOU.
Right, the MOU.
Signed around June 17, 2026. And the most crucial thing to grasp right out of the gate is that this isn't a final peace deal.
Not at all.
It's a 14-point interim framework. And it was heavily brokered through mediation by Pakistan and Qatar.
Which, I mean, the logistics of the signing alone are kind of mind-blowing.
Oh, the pageantry of it all.
Right. The text talks about a mix of electronic signatures and hard copy ceremonies at these incredibly symbolic locations like Versailles. But looking past all that photo op stuff, the nuts and bolts of those 14 points are massive.
They really are. So it mandates the immediate and permanent termination of military operations. Everywhere. And the author explicitly points out that this includes Lebanon.
Wow, yeah.
It sets up a strict 60-day ceasefire. It demands a pledge from Iran not to develop nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And in exchange, the U.S. issues immediate waivers for Iranian oil and fuel exports.
Okay, but the financial mechanics here, that's where my jaw kind of hit the floor. The MOU outlines the unfreezing of up to $25 billion in Iranian assets.
Right, $25 billion up front.
And I want to pause on that because unfreezing that much money internationally, it's not like Venmoing somebody.
Oh, no, not at all.
When we talk about frozen Iranian assets, we're usually talking about central bank reserves or oil revenues that are physically trapped in foreign bank accounts, like in South Korea or Iraq.
Right, because international sanctions make it totally illegal for banks to process those transfers through the SWIFT network.
Exactly. So the U.S. basically has to issue these incredibly complex legal waivers to global financial institutions, promising they won't get locked out of the U.S. economy just for moving this money.
It's a massive bureaucratic headache. And that $25 billion is just the immediate cash injection. The text also talks about a massive conditional $300 billion reconstruction and development fund.
$300 billion.
Tied to future compliance, yes, but still.
Okay, so I have to push back here. If I'm reading this right, we are giving them $25 billion up front and promising $300 billion later, just for a 60-day pause.
Yeah, that's what it looks like on paper.
I mean, it sounds like paying your landlord a fortune just to, think about renewing your lease for 2 months. It feels totally unbalanced.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the author tackles that exact skepticism. Because it does look like just kicking the can down the road at an exorbitant price.
Right.
But he argues this isn't a failure of negotiation. It was a calculated necessity. And to understand why these massive concessions were made, you have to look at the horrifying alternative.
The economic cliff.
Exactly. The text argues that kinetic military options had simply been exhausted. The weeks of conflict caused, one-sided damage to Iran, but it pushed the whole world to the absolute brink.
Because of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes, the geography is everything.
It really is. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz handles roughly 20% of global oil and LNG trade. It's the absolute choke point of the world.
And during this conflict, that choke point was effectively severed. The U.S. had a naval blockade, and Iran responded by mining the strait.
And naval mines are terrifying. They aren't just, floating spiked balls from old World War II movies.
Oh, definitely not. They are incredibly smart.
Yeah, they rest on the seafloor. They use acoustic sensors to listen for this specific audio signature of a commercial supertanker. If a shipping company knows there are active smart mines in that water, insurance premiums don't just go up.
Right. The coverage is just revoked entirely.
Exactly. And no insurance means no ships move. Period.
Which causes absolute chaos in global energy markets. So the terms to reopen it were non-negotiable. Immediate reopening to commercial shipping, no tolls, Iran clears the mines, and the U.S. ends the naval blockade within 30 days.
Okay, but if the U.S. has all this naval and air power, why not just bomb the facilities launching the mines?
Well, the author points out that further strikes risked massive Iranian retaliation against allied infrastructure.
Oh, right. Like in Qatar?
Exactly. It's like a game of Jenga.
That's a great analogy. You've successfully pulled out a few blocks, meaning you've degraded their military capabilities. But if you pull one more block, the whole tower comes crashing down.
Right.
Because rebuilding a Qatari LNG facility takes months, if not years, but clearing naval mines, that takes days.
Yeah, the asymmetry of the damage is huge.
So, learner, imagine the cascading effect on your daily life if 20% of the world's energy simply vanished overnight.
It would be catastrophic.
Signing the MOU wasn't just about diplomacy, it was literally to keep the global lights on.
So if dropping bombs has reached diminishing returns, and you have to keep those naval routes open, how do you solve the underlying threats? The author says the answer isn't a better bomb, it's a better government.
Right. Which brings us to the 4 core issues the text specifically names. You've got the nuclear weapons ambitions, the ballistic missile programs, funding for regional proxies, and the brutal suppression of free speech and assembly.
And the author's core thesis here is that military force can only degrade those capabilities temporarily.
Right, it's like playing whack-a-mole.
Exactly. It cannot enforce permanent behavioral change unless you want perpetual bombing or, boots on the ground forever.
Which nobody wants.
No, neither is realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So he advocates for what he calls the organic solution.
The organic solution? I like that phrasing.
Right. He believes that a government that derives its legitimacy from its people, rather than some revolutionary ideology, it naturally loses the incentive to build nukes or fund terrorism.
Because it's too busy, running a normal country.
Exactly. So the only durable resolution is regime change, driven organically by the Iranian people themselves.
Okay, but I have to push back again here. It's a really nice thought, but people have protested in Iran before.
Many times.
And they have been brutally suppressed. I mean, the state apparatus is heavily armed and totally ruthless. Why would this time be any different just because a 60-day MOU was signed in Versailles?
That is the million-dollar question, and it leads perfectly into the author's strategic view of this 60-day window. It's not just a pause in the shooting. It is a massive psychological shift for the population.
Oh, interesting. How so?
According to the source, you really can't have a massive domestic uprising when the public is terrified of imminent foreign airstrikes.
Right, the old rally around the flag effect.
Exactly. Or when the country is fully mobilized for national defense, the ceasefire removes that external threat.
So the government can't just call everyone a traitor or a foreign spy the second they complain about the price of bread.
Precisely. And this timeline strategy is key. This 60-day window is designed to be extended. 2 months, then another, aiming for roughly 6 months total of this breathing room.
And during this breathing room, the author lays out a 3-pronged mobilization plan.
Right.
Number 1 is the economic relief we talked about.
The waivers and the $25 billion.
Exactly. Because if daily life doesn't improve for the average citizen, despite all that oil money flowing back in, public frustration is going to spike. It exposes the regime's internal failures.
Because they can't blame American sanctions anymore.
Exactly. Number 2 is the diaspora. Without the fog of active war, millions of expatriates can organize and focus their resources.
Which is a huge asset.
And number 3 is the domestic opposition itself, finally having the breathing room to regroup.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, It's a very delicate tightrope.
Yeah.
The extensions of the MOU are entirely performance-based.
Meaning the U.S. is basically keeping its finger hovering right over the strike button.
Yes, the threat of resumed military pressure has to remain credible. It forces the regime to behave, and it provides an umbrella for the protesters.
Okay, but an umbrella only keeps the rain off. As I pointed out earlier, protests have failed before.
Right.
To actually overcome a heavily armed, surveilled state, these protesters need an asymmetric advantage.
They need a new weapon.
Exactly. And this is where the text gets incredibly futuristic. It introduces this concept called DemocracyTech.
Yes, DemocracyTech. It is easily the most sci-fi sounding part of the dispatch, but it's grounded in highly practical technology.
And we need to be clear about what this means. It's not just like using Twitter or downloading a basic VPN to watch YouTube.
No. The author defines it as an integrated stack.
An integrated stack.
Right. It's a suite of secure communication networks, information operations infrastructure, and coordination systems. And it's designed specifically for non-violent democratic transitions under hostile authoritarian conditions.
Wow. So it actually helps document human rights abuses safely, and this is the crazy part, it helps build parallel structures of legitimate governance.
Exactly.
So if the old way of protesting was like trying to coordinate a flash mob using carrier pigeons while the government has radar,
That's a good way to put it.
DemocracyTech is like giving that flash mob an encrypted, decentralized hive mind.
Yeah, that's exactly what the text describes. And there's a specific organization mentioned in the sources. Go ahead, Liberate?
Liberate, right.
Liberate intends to actually build this specific DemocracyTech infrastructure. Their whole mission is to give the Iranian people that asymmetric advantage so their coordination simply outpaces traditional state repression.
But building something like that, an entire shadow internet and governance stack, that takes immense talent and money.
Which is why the author has a very specific call to action. He says the future won't be decided by diplomats sitting in negotiating rooms at Versailles.
Right.
It relies heavily on the Iranian diaspora. They have to leverage their technical talents to fund and deploy these exact tools.
Because they have the Silicon Valley experience, the capital, the safe havens to build the code.
Precisely. And if they succeed, the implications are staggering. If this DemocracyTech stack actually works, it could become a blueprint for dismantling authoritarianism worldwide.
Wow.
It would fundamentally shift the balance of power from traditional state militaries to civilian tech networks.
So what does this all mean for us? When we synthesize all of this interim 14-point MOU, born out of total military and economic exhaustion, it isn't a diplomatic failure.
Not at all.
It's a deliberate unpausing of domestic momentum. It literally stops the physical bombs so the internet and the streets can take over.
And that's the core takeaway for you listening today. Power is shifting. Geopolitics is no longer just about aircraft carriers and naval blockades.
Right, it's not just counting tanks anymore.
Exactly. It's increasingly about digital stacks, diaspora coordination, and asymmetric technological advantages.
It really makes you look at the news differently. But, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on this source material.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The text suggests that DemocracyTech can ultimately be more powerful than kinetic warfare. But if tech platforms can effectively topple a government from the outside in, what happens when authoritarian regimes start building autocracy tech to fight back?
Oh, wow.
Right. Are we looking at a future where wars aren't fought over land or maritime choke points, but over the fundamental architecture of the internet itself?
That is a chilling thought, but highly likely. The arms race of the future is digital.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Islamabad MOU and the rise of democracy tech. Thank you so much for listening and exploring these incredible sources with us.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Keep questioning the narratives, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.